My name is Naomi Carter, and the worst night of my life began because I chose to save strangers instead of arriving on time for my own wedding anniversary. People often say family should always come first. That night, 50,000 families were depending on me. I worked as the director of emergency safety for the city's largest water system. Most days were quiet. I checked reports, attended meetings, and solved small problems before anyone noticed them. But on that rainy Thursday afternoon, everything changed. At 3 o'clock, just as I was packing my bag to leave for our 10th wedding anniversary celebration, one of my engineers rushed into my office without knocking. "We have a serious problem," he said, breathing hard. "A chemical storage tank has cracked." My smile disappeared. "How bad?" "If it reaches the main water supply." He didn't have to finish. I already understood. Thousands of homes, schools, hospitals, nursing homes. An entire city could lose safe drinking water. Within minutes, our emergency team filled the meeting room. Phones rang non-stop. Maps covered every screen. Everyone looked at me, waiting for a decision. I glanced at my watch. "Welcome to a new video. I hope you'll enjoy the story. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks. Now let's get back to the story." 5 o'clock. Our anniversary dinner started at 6. My husband, Trevor, had spent weeks planning the party. He told me it would be a surprise with our closest friends and family. I grabbed my phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. So I left a message. "Trevor, I'm so sorry. There's an emergency at work. I'm going to be late, but I'll come as soon as I can. Please tell everyone I'll be there." I believed he would understand. He always said my work mattered. Or at least, I thought he did. For the next 3 hours, nobody left the meeting room. We found a way to stop the leak before it reached the city's water supply. Every decision had to be perfect. One mistake could hurt thousands of people. When the final report came in, everyone around the table started clapping. "We did it," one engineer whispered. Another smiled at me. "You just protected almost 50,000 people." I should have felt proud. Instead, I looked at the clock. 9:23. I was more than 3 hours late. Oh no. I grabbed my purse and ran. Rain poured from the dark sky as I hurried toward my car. I called Trevor again. No answer. I sent a text. "I'm coming. Please wait for me." No reply. The drive felt longer than ever. Every red light seemed to last forever. I kept imagining everyone laughing together while my chair stayed empty. Still, I believed everything would be fine once I explained what had happened. Saving lives was a good reason to be late. Wasn't it? When I finally reached the hotel ballroom, music floated through the doors. People were still inside. I smiled with relief. "I made it," I whispered. I fixed my wet hair, straightened my dress, and walked inside. The room became strangely quiet. Conversations stopped. Several guests looked away instead of smiling. Some even looked embarrassed. My eyes searched for Trevor. Then I saw him. He stood beside the huge anniversary cake, laughing with my childhood best friend, Vanessa. She was wearing the silver necklace I had given her for her birthday last year. Trevor had his arm around her shoulders. Not like friends. Like something else. Before I could speak, another voice cut through the silence. "Oh, look who finally decided to show up." Trevor's mother, Gloria, slowly walked toward me with a wide smile that never reached her eyes. She looked me up and down before laughing loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You're too late," she said. "We already celebrated." Several people shifted uncomfortably. Nobody defended me. Gloria pointed toward the entrance. "So why don't you save yourself the embarrassment? She folded her arms. Get out. The words hit harder than any slap. I stared at Trevor, waiting for him to tell his mother to stop. He didn't. He simply looked at the floor. Vanessa wouldn't even meet my eyes. My chest hurt so much I could barely breathe. Without saying a word, I turned toward the exit. Maybe leaving was easier than crying in front of everyone. Maybe. But as I reached the doorway, I froze. Someone was standing there. A tall man in a dark raincoat held a sealed folder in one hand. His eyes met mine before they slowly moved across the room toward Trevor and Vanessa. Then he spoke one calm sentence that made the entire ballroom fall silent. "I've been looking for Mrs. Naomi Carter," he said. "What I'm about to reveal will change every person in this room forever." Every person in the ballroom turned toward the man in the raincoat. Water dripped from the edge of his coat onto the polished floor. He looked tired, serious, and completely out of place at a wedding anniversary party. "I'm Naomi Carter," I said quietly. He nodded and walked toward me. "My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm an investigator with Westbridge Financial Security." Gloria rolled her eyes. "Wonderful. Now debt collectors are showing up." Daniel ignored her. He handed me the sealed folder. "Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you a few questions in front of these witnesses." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements. My bank statements. Except I had never seen most of these transactions. Large withdrawals. Transfers. Luxury purchases. Vacation payments. The total was so big that my stomach dropped. "What is this?" I whispered. Daniel looked directly at Trevor. "For the last 18 months, someone has been moving money from Mrs. Carter's accounts through a series of linked transactions. The investigation points to a person with authorized access." The room became painfully quiet. Trevor finally spoke. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm presenting evidence," Daniel replied calmly. Vanessa took a step backward. I flipped through the papers faster. Then I saw a transfer made just 2 weeks earlier. Destination account, Vanessa Reed. My childhood best friend. The woman standing beside my husband. I looked up slowly. "Trevor?" He swallowed hard. "Naomi, this isn't what it looks like." Gloria immediately jumped in. My son would never steal from his wife. Daniel opened another page. The funds were used to pay for a downtown apartment, a car lease, and multiple trips booked for Mr. Trevor Carter and Ms. Vanessa Reed. A few guests gasped. One woman quietly covered her mouth. I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath me. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of trust. And everyone here had been celebrating while I sat in an emergency meeting protecting the city. "Tell me he's lying," I said. Trevor finally met my eyes. For a second, I hoped. Then he looked away. That was my answer. Vanessa burst into tears. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. When exactly was it supposed to happen? I asked. She couldn't answer. Gloria stepped between us. Maybe if you spent less time saving strangers and more time being a wife, this wouldn't have happened. The words sliced through me. For years I had worked long hours, but I had also paid most of the bills, supported Trevor's business ideas, and helped Gloria whenever she needed money. Suddenly dozens of small memories rushed back. Trevor asking for access to our accounts. Vanessa defended him during arguments. Gloria said I cared more about work than family. None of it had seemed strange before. Now it fits together like pieces of a puzzle. Daniel closed the folder. "Mrs. Carter, because the accounts are legally yours, you have the right to freeze them immediately." Trevor's head snapped up. "Wait." For the first time that night, he sounded afraid. "Naomi, let's talk privately." I stared at him. This man had ignored my calls, celebrated with another woman, let his mother humiliate me, and secretly used my money. Something inside me became very calm. No, I said. He stepped closer. Please. Did you love her? His silence lasted too long. That hurt more than anything. I took out my phone. My fingers stopped shaking. Daniel, how do I freeze the accounts? Trevor's face turned pale. Naomi, don't do this. You already did this. Right there in the ballroom, while everyone watched, I called the bank. I froze every joint account. I canceled the cards. I changed the passwords. Trevor grabbed a chair as if he might fall. Vanessa began crying harder. Gloria shouted, "You can't leave my son with nothing." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I remembered her words. You're too late. Get out. I picked up the anniversary cake knife from the table. Gasps spread across the room. Instead of threatening anyone, I calmly cut the huge silver and white cake straight down the middle. One half slid toward Trevor and Vanessa. The other half stayed in front of me. Happy anniversary, I said. Then I turned and walked out into the rain. But before I reached my car, Daniel called after me. Mrs. Carter. I stopped. He handed me one final document from the folder. There's something else you should know. I looked down. It was a property record. Trevor and Vanessa weren't just having an affair. 3 months earlier, they had secretly bought a condo together using money taken from my accounts. And my name wasn't anywhere on it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. And for the first time all night, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The rain had almost stopped by the time I reached my apartment. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't scream. I just kept thinking about the words on that property record. 3 months. For 3 months, Trevor and Vanessa had been building a new life together while pretending everything was normal. They smiled across the dinner table, laughed at family gatherings, and looked me in the eyes every single day. I unlocked my front door and walked into silence. The living room looked exactly the way I had left it that morning. Our wedding picture still sat on the fireplace. Trevor's favorite coffee mug was still on the kitchen counter. His jacket still hung by the door. For years, those things had felt like home. Now they looked like someone else's life. My phone buzzed. Trevor calling. I declined it. A second later, another call. Then another. Soon messages began filling my screen. Naomi, please let me explain. It's more complicated than you think. Answer me. You're making a huge mistake. I smiled sadly. No, I whispered to the empty room. You already made it. I walked to the fireplace and picked up our wedding photo. We both looked so young. I'm so happy. Back then, Trevor used to tell me that honesty was the most important part of marriage. Funny how people sometimes break the promises they speak the loudest. Instead of throwing the picture away, I placed it carefully inside a drawer. Some memories deserve to stay in the past. Others reminded us never to make the same mistake twice. The next morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual. Everyone had already heard about the emergency that saved the city's water supply. My team surprised me with applause. You were incredible yesterday, one engineer said. The mayor wants to thank you personally. Another coworker handed me a small framed certificate. For outstanding leadership during the water crisis. I smiled. Thank you. For the first time since the anniversary party, I remembered something important. I wasn't weak. I wasn't a failure. I had protected 50,000 people. No one could take that away from me. Just then my assistant knocked on the office door. Naomi, there's someone here asking for you. Trevor walked in before I could answer. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His shirt looked wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. I only need 5 minutes. You have 2. He sat down across from my desk. I'm sorry. I waited. He continued. I never meant to hurt you. I folded my hands. But you did. It just happened. I almost laughed. People accidentally spill coffee. They don't accidentally steal money for 18 months. He looked down. I was going to tell you. When? He had no answer. I love Vanessa, he admitted quietly. The word stung, but not as much as I expected. Maybe because I already knew. But I care about you too. I shook my head. Don't confuse caring with using someone. He looked around my office. You've always been stronger than me. No. I have. You just stopped trying. Trevor leaned forward. If you don't report the money, I'll pay everything back. With what? He didn't answer. The accounts are frozen. The condo is in your name. Your business is already losing clients because you can't pay your bills. His face turned white. How do you know that? I finally started asking questions. His shoulders dropped. Then he surprised me. It was my mother's idea. I stared at him. What? She kept saying you cared more about work than family. He rubbed his forehead. She said I deserved someone who had time for me. And that someone was Vanessa? He nodded without speaking. I couldn't believe it. Gloria hadn't just approved of the affair. She had encouraged it. The office suddenly felt very quiet. I have one last favor to ask, Trevor said. What? Please don't tell anyone else. I looked out the window at the busy city below. People hurried to work. Children waited for school buses. Life kept moving. Then I looked back at him. I haven't told anyone. Hope appeared in his eyes. But I won't lie if someone asks. His hope disappeared. He stood slowly. So this is really over? I took off my wedding ring. For 10 years it had rested on my finger. Now it felt strangely heavy. I placed it gently on my desk. It ended long before yesterday. Trevor looked at the ring for several seconds. Without another word, he walked out. As soon as the door closed, Daniel Mercer stepped into the hallway. He had apparently been waiting nearby. I wasn't trying to listen, he said. But I do have news. What happened? The forensic accountants finished tracing the missing money. I felt my stomach tighten. There was more? Daniel gave a slow nod. I'm afraid so. He handed me another report. The amount stolen wasn't just enough to buy the condo. There were dozens of hidden transfers. When I added the numbers together, I nearly stopped breathing. Trevor hadn't stolen enough to start a new life. He had stolen enough to destroy mine. And Daniel's final sentence made me realize the real battle had only just begun. Naomi, he said quietly, I think there are more people involved than just Trevor, Vanessa, and Gloria. I stared at Daniel. What do you mean, more people? He placed another folder on my desk. I don't want to accuse anyone without proof, he said carefully. But the money didn't move straight from your account to Trevor's. It passed through several accounts first. To hide it? He nodded. Exactly. I slowly opened the folder. Every page showed dates, account numbers, and names. One name made my heart skip. Larkin and Stone Consulting. That company belonged to Trevor's cousin, Miles. Miles had always acted like the friendly member of the family. Every holiday he joked with everyone. Every birthday he brought gifts. I remembered something else. He was also the one who had recommended the accountant Trevor used. Daniel pointed to one page. Money went from your account to Miles's company as fake consulting payments. Then it was sent to Trevor. And Vanessa? She received part of it later. I leaned back in my chair. This wasn't just an affair anymore. It was a carefully planned theft. Daniel looked at me. Naomi, the police can investigate, but these cases take time. I understand. He stood up. In the meantime, don't warn them. I gave a small smile. I won't. After he left, I sat alone for several minutes. Then I remembered something. Every year, Gloria hosted a huge family barbecue at her house. This year's party was only 4 days away. Almost everyone would be there. Trevor. Vanessa. Miles. Every relative. Every family friend. An idea slowly formed in my mind. Not to embarrass them with lies. To let the truth speak for itself. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was Gloria. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. What? Her voice sounded unusually sweet. Naomi, dear, I think we've all overreacted. I nearly laughed. We? Families argue. You called me an embarrassment. You were emotional. No, I replied calmly. You were. She stayed quiet. Then she changed her tone. I think you should come to the barbecue. Why? So we can fix everything. I knew exactly why. She wanted everyone smiling together before the truth spread any farther. I'll be there, I said. Her voice brightened. Wonderful. But I have one condition. What is it? Everyone comes. Of course. Trevor. Yes. Vanessa. A pause. Fine. Miles. Another pause. I suppose. And don't tell them I asked. Why? Because I want it to be a surprise. She laughed softly. I knew you'd come around. She had no idea. For the next 3 days, I stayed busy. I met with lawyers. I signed papers. I gave investigators permission to examine every financial record. Each meeting made the picture clearer. Trevor hadn't simply borrowed money. He had forged my electronic signature several times. That changed everything. It wasn't just dishonest. It was a crime. On Saturday afternoon, I drove to Gloria's house. Cars already filled the driveway. Children played in the yard. Music drifted through the open windows. From the outside, it looked like a happy family gathering. Inside, nothing was happy anymore. As soon as I walked through the gate, conversations slowed. People looked surprised to see me. Trevor froze beside the grill. Vanessa almost dropped her drink. Miles gave me a nervous smile. Only Gloria looked pleased. There she is, she announced loudly. I told everyone our family could work this out. I smiled politely. I hope so. She hugged me. It felt cold. Fake. Trevor slowly walked over. Thank you for coming. I'm here because your mother invited me. He looked relieved anyway. For nearly an hour, I said very little. I greeted relatives. I played with my young niece. Helped set plates on the table. I watched. People reveal a lot when they think you're no longer paying attention. Trevor and Vanessa barely spoke to each other. Miles kept checking his phone. Gloria watched me every few minutes, making sure I wasn't causing trouble. Finally, everyone gathered around the long picnic table. Gloria stood up. I'd like to make a toast. She lifted her glass. To my family. Everyone raised theirs. Before anyone could drink, I stood. I'd like to say something too. Gloria smiled confidently. Of course. I reached into my bag. Instead of pulling out papers, I removed a small projector and a flash drive. Trevor's face lost all its color. What are you doing? He whispered. I'm telling the truth. I connected the projector to the television on the patio. The first image appeared. A copy of one bank transfer. Then another. Then another. Dates. Amounts. Electronic signatures. Every payment is clearly connected. Confused whispers spread across the yard. What are we looking at? Those are Naomi's accounts. Miles received money? I said nothing. I simply clicked to the next page. Then the next. Then a photo of the condo purchase. Trevor's name. Vanessa's name. Purchase price. Payment source. The entire yard fell silent. Even the children stopped playing. Finally, Trevor stood up so quickly his chair tipped over. Turn it off. I looked him straight in the eyes. No. Then Daniel Mercer walked through the open gate with 2 detectives behind him. And every person at the barbecue realized this family gathering was about to become something none of them would ever forget. The happy music stopped. Nobody reached for another drink. The only sound was the soft breeze moving through the trees. Daniel Mercer stepped into the backyard with 2 detectives walking beside him. They weren't rushing. They weren't shouting. They simply looked around the crowd until their eyes rested on Trevor, Vanessa, and Miles. Gloria quickly forced a smile. There must be some misunderstanding. Daniel spoke in the same calm voice I had heard before. We're here to continue an active financial investigation. No one is under arrest at this moment, but we do have additional questions. Trevor pointed at me. You planned this? Yes, I answered. I planned to tell the truth. Several relatives looked at me at the documents still displayed on the television. Trevor's uncle finally spoke. Trevor, are those transfers real? Trevor hesitated. That hesitation was all anyone needed. His uncle lowered his head in disappointment. I asked you a question. They're real, Trevor admitted quietly. Gasps spread across the yard. Vanessa covered her face with both hands. I told you this would happen, she whispered to Trevor. Gloria spun toward her. Be quiet. One of the detectives stepped closer. Mr. Carter, did you have your wife's permission to move these funds? Trevor couldn't answer. The detective asked again. Did she authorize these transfers? No. The single word seemed to echo across the yard. My cousin Lily looked at me with tears in her eyes. You really didn't know? I shook my head. No. She walked over and hugged me. I'm so sorry. That simple hug meant more than all the speeches people had given me over the years. It reminded me that not everyone in the family had betrayed me. Daniel placed another document on the patio table. This report also shows that several electronic signatures were created from a computer registered to Mr. Carter. Miles suddenly stood up. I didn't know they were fake. Everyone turned toward him. I only handled paperwork, he said nervously. Trevor stared at his cousin. Miles. You said Naomi had approved everything. Trevor's eyes widened. You told me to keep quiet. The 2 men began arguing. You signed the invoices. You created the company. You took the money too. The detectives exchanged quick looks. Without saying a word, they started writing notes. Gloria clapped her hands loudly. Stop this. No one listened. The lies that had taken months to build were falling apart in minutes. Vanessa slowly stepped toward me. Her eyes were red from crying. I'm sorry. I looked at her without speaking. I never wanted to hurt you. You did. I know. She wiped away tears. It started after you missed so many dinners. I nodded slowly. So instead of talking to me, you started dating my husband? She couldn't answer. I trusted you since we were children. I know. You were the first person I called when my father passed away. She began crying even harder. You stood beside me on my wedding day. Her shoulders shook. I'll regret this forever. I believed she would. But regret couldn't erase what had happened. I wasn't interested in making her suffer. I simply wanted my life back. The lead detective closed his notebook. Mrs. Carter, thank you for your cooperation. Then he looked at Trevor. We'll be contacting your attorney. Trevor nodded weakly. The detectives and Daniel walked toward the gate. Before leaving, Daniel looked back at me. You handled this with remarkable patience. I almost didn't. But you did. After they left, the backyard remained silent. Nobody touched the food. The barbecue grills slowly cooled. The party was over. One by one, relatives began walking toward me. Not to ask questions. To apologize. Trevor's aunt lowered her eyes. We believed the wrong story. Another cousin added, we thought you cared more about work than your family. I smiled sadly. I cared enough to save 50,000 families. No one argued with that. Even Gloria stayed quiet. For the first time since I had known her, she had nothing to say. I walked over to the anniversary cake sitting untouched on the table. The words Happy 10th Anniversary were still written across the top. I picked up the cake server and quietly cut a small slice. Everyone watched. I took one bite. Then I set the plate down. This celebration was supposed to honor love, I said. But love cannot grow where honesty doesn't exist. I turned toward Trevor. I'm filing for divorce. He closed his eyes. I understand. And I'm asking the court to recover every dollar that belongs to me. He gave a slow nod. I understand that too. There was no shouting. No insults. Only silence. Sometimes silence hurts more than anger. As I reached my car, my phone rang. It was my office. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Naomi? Yes. The mayor himself was on the line. I've been trying to reach you all afternoon. The city council voted unanimously. For what? We're holding a public ceremony next week. I frowned. What kind of ceremony? We're giving you the city's Medal of Service for preventing the water disaster. I stood completely still. While Trevor was losing everything he had built on lies. My own life was about to change in a way I had never imagined. The phone stayed in my hand long after the mayor ended the call. I looked up at the sky. Just 1 week earlier, I had thought my biggest challenge was protecting the city's water supply. Now I was protecting my own future. For the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. 3 days later, the City Hall auditorium was filled with people. Reporters lined the walls. Television cameras pointed toward the stage. Police officers, firefighters, doctors, engineers, and city leaders filled the front rows. I wore a simple navy blue suit instead of an expensive dress. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there because my team had done something important. As I waited behind the stage curtain, the mayor smiled at me. Nervous? A little. He laughed. You shouldn't be. The ceremony began. One by one, speakers talked about the emergency. They explained how a dangerous chemical leak had almost reached the city's drinking water. They described how dozens of experts had worked through the evening. Then the mayor stepped to the microphone. But every team needs someone willing to make the hardest decision. He looked toward me. Mrs. Naomi Carter chose to stay in that emergency meeting even though she knew she would miss the most important personal celebration of her year. The audience became very quiet. Because of her leadership, nearly 50,000 people continued drinking safe water. Applause filled the room. I walked onto the stage. The mayor placed the city's Medal of Service around my neck. The applause grew even louder. Bright camera flashes filled the auditorium. Then a reporter raised her hand. Mrs. Carter, many people have heard about what happened at your anniversary party. After everything you've been through, what kept you going? I thought for a moment before answering. My parents taught me something when I was young. The room became silent. They said your character isn't tested when life is easy. It's tested when doing the right thing costs you something. Several people nodded. I lost a marriage. I paused. But I didn't lose myself. The audience stood to applaud. I wasn't expecting that. Neither were the reporters. After the ceremony ended, dozens of people came to shake my hand. Some thanked me for protecting their neighborhoods. Others simply said they were proud of me. An elderly woman held both my hands. My husband is in the hospital, she said softly. He drinks that water every day. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you for choosing us. I hugged her gently. At that moment, I realized something. The anniversary party had been filled with people who measured love by attention. This room was filled with people who measured love by sacrifice. There was a big difference. As I walked outside, Daniel Mercer was waiting near the steps. I thought I'd congratulate you. Thank you. He handed me another envelope. I promise this is the last folder. I laughed for the first time in days. That's good news already. Inside was a court order. The judge had approved an emergency freeze on the condo Trevor and Vanessa had purchased. It could not be sold. It could not be transferred. It would remain locked until the case was finished. Daniel smiled. The financial records were overwhelming. So, they can't hide anything now? No. He pointed to the last page. And there's more. I read the final paragraph. Trevor had agreed to cooperate fully with investigators. He had confessed to forging my electronic signature. He had also admitted that Gloria knew exactly where much of the money came from. I closed the folder. I never wanted revenge just to hurt them. I know. I wanted the truth. And you got it. A week later, the divorce hearing arrived. It wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches. Trevor looked thinner than before. He quietly admitted everything in front of the judge. He apologized for stealing my money. He apologized for lying. He apologized for betraying our marriage. The judge listened carefully before signing the final orders. Trevor would repay every dollar the court could recover. The remaining debt would come from selling his personal property. When the hearing ended, Trevor stopped me outside the courtroom. I don't expect forgiveness. You shouldn't. I threw away the best person in my life. I looked at him calmly. No. He looked confused. You threw away your own integrity. He lowered his head. I hope one day you become the kind of man you pretended to be. Then I walked away. As I reached the courthouse steps, my phone buzzed with a new message. It wasn't from Trevor. It wasn't from Vanessa. It wasn't even from Daniel. It was from someone I had never met before. The message contained only one sentence. Your story gave me the courage to leave a dishonest relationship today. Thank you for reminding me that the truth is always worth fighting for. I smiled. Maybe saving 50,000 people hadn't been the only life that changed because I chose to do the right thing. A month passed, and life slowly began to feel different. Not perfect. But peaceful. Every morning, I opened the curtains in my apartment and watched the sunrise over the city. The silence no longer felt lonely. It felt like a fresh start. The court case continued behind the scenes, but I no longer let it control my days. Instead, I focused on my work. Our emergency team started a new safety program so another water crisis would never happen again. One afternoon, my assistant walked into my office carrying a small stack of letters. These came from local schools. Schools? She smiled. The children heard about what happened. I opened the first envelope. A little boy had drawn a picture of a glass of water with a smiling face. Underneath he had written, "Thank you for keeping my family safe." Another child had drawn firefighters, police officers, and me standing together. The letters made my eyes fill with tears. None of those children cared that I had missed an anniversary party. They cared that their parents had clean water. I carefully placed every drawing into a folder. Those pictures meant more than any expensive gift. Late that afternoon, Daniel Mercer stopped by my office. "I thought you'd like an update." I invited him to sit down. "The court approved the sale of the condo." I nodded quietly. "The money recovered from the sale will go directly toward repaying what Trevor stole." "What about Miles?" "He accepted responsibility for helping hide the transactions. He'll pay heavy fines and can no longer operate his consulting company." "And Gloria?" Daniel sighed. "She wasn't charged with theft because investigators couldn't prove she handled the money herself." I wasn't surprised. "But," he continued, "her testimony showed she encouraged Trevor to deceive you." I looked out the window. Sometimes losing the respect of your own family is a bigger punishment than a courtroom. Daniel smiled. "I think you're right." A few weeks later, I received an invitation to another family gathering. This time it wasn't from Gloria. It was from Trevor's uncle, Henry. The note was short. "Some of us would like the chance to apologize properly." I thought about throwing the invitation away. Instead, I decided to go. Not for Trevor. Not for Gloria. For myself. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt completely different from the last barbecue. There was no loud music. No forced laughter. People greeted me with quiet smiles. Henry walked over first. "Thank you for coming. I'm only here for a little while." "I understand." As the afternoon went on, several relatives apologized. One admitted, "We judged you without hearing your side." Another said, "We believed gossip instead of facts." I accepted their apologies. Holding on to anger would only make my own heart heavier. Then the front gate opened. Trevor walked in alone. The conversation stopped. He looked thinner than ever. His shoulders were bent, and there was sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He walked straight toward me. "I almost didn't come." "Why did you?" He looked around at his family. "Because I owe everyone the truth." He turned to face them. "I lied to all of you." No one interrupted. I blamed Naomi because it was easier than admitting I was selfish. He took a deep breath. "She worked long hours because she was protecting people. I complained because I wanted attention. I stole from the person who trusted me most." His voice shook. "I destroyed my own marriage." The yard stayed silent. Then he looked at me. "I don't deserve another chance." "No," I answered honestly. "But I hope you become someone who never hurts another person this way." He nodded. "I will spend the rest of my life trying." Without another word, he quietly left. No one chased after him. No one defended him. For the first time, he had accepted responsibility instead of making excuses. As I prepared to leave, Gloria slowly walked toward me. She looked older than I remembered. Almost tired. "I was wrong," she said softly. I waited. I kept telling Trevor that work mattered less than family. A tear rolled down her cheek. "But you proved that protecting other families is also an act of love." It was the first honest thing I had ever heard her say. "I can't change what I did," she whispered. "No," I replied. "But you can choose who you become tomorrow." She nodded silently. As I drove home that evening, I realized something important. Revenge had never been shouting. It had never been destroying people. It had been standing calmly in the truth while every lie collapsed on its own. When I reached my apartment, I noticed a small package sitting outside my door. There was no return address. Inside was a simple wooden frame. The children's drawing of the smiling glass of water had been professionally framed. Tucked behind it was a handwritten note. Heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they simply choose to do the right thing when no one else wants to. I smiled as I placed the frame on my desk. It became the first thing I saw every morning, and the perfect reminder that losing people who never truly valued you can sometimes be the beginning of finding a better life. 6 months later, I stood in front of the same hotel where everything had fallen apart. The glass doors reflected the morning sunlight instead of the rain from that terrible anniversary night. This time, I wasn't there to celebrate a marriage. I was there to speak at the city's annual leadership conference. Life has a funny way of bringing you back to the places where your heart once broke. The difference is that sometimes you return stronger. As I walked into the ballroom, I noticed it had been decorated differently. The old anniversary banners were gone. Rows of chairs faced a large stage. Engineers, teachers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, and students filled the room. No one whispered behind my back. No one looked at me with pity. They smiled. The mayor welcomed me warmly. "It's good to have you here again." I smiled back. "It feels different this time." It should. When my name was announced, the audience applauded as I walked onto the stage. I looked around the room. Then I noticed a familiar face sitting near the back. Trevor. He wasn't sitting with special guests. He wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He quietly sat alone, listening. For a second, I wondered if I should feel angry. Instead, I felt nothing. The pain was finally gone. I stepped up to the microphone. When people hear my story, I began, they usually ask me one question. The room became quiet. They ask if I regret staying at work that day. I paused. My answer is always the same. No. A few people nodded. If I had left that emergency meeting early, thousands of families could have been harmed. I lost a marriage. But children still had clean water to drink. Parents still made dinner. Hospitals still cared for patients. If I had to make that choice again, I smiled. I would still choose to protect those families. The audience applauded. Then I continued. But there is another lesson. I held up the small wooden frame with the drawing of the smiling glass of water. The same picture a little boy had mailed to me months earlier. This drawing reminds me that doing the right thing doesn't always bring an immediate reward. Sometimes it costs you friends. Sometimes it costs you relationships. But if you stay honest, the truth eventually catches up with every lie. The applause lasted even longer. When the speech ended, people lined up to shake my hand. My parents thanked me. Students asked for advice. Several young engineers said they wanted careers helping people because of my story. As the crowd slowly disappeared, I heard a familiar voice. Naomi. I turned. Trevor stood a few feet away. He looked healthier than the last time I had seen him. Still humble. Still quiet. "I won't keep you long," he said. I nodded. "I just wanted to tell you something." I waited. "I found a new job." "That's good." "It isn't a big job. I know I have to rebuild my life one step at a time." "I'm glad you're working." He smiled sadly. "I also started volunteering every weekend at a community food bank." I looked surprised. "Why?" "Because for the first time in my life." He took a deep breath. "I wanted to help people without expecting anything back." I believed him. Not because of his words. Because his eyes no longer searched for excuses. They accepted responsibility. "I'm happy you're changing," I said. "Thank you." He looked down for a moment. "I'll always be sorry." "I know." He gave one small nod. Then he walked away. This time, I didn't watch him leave with sadness. I simply wished him well. Outside the hotel, the afternoon sun warmed the sidewalks. As I headed toward my car, my phone rang. It was my office. "Naomi," my assistant said excitedly, "the city council approved your proposal." I smiled. "The new emergency training center?" "Yes. It'll be named after the team that stopped the water crisis." I looked up at the bright blue sky. Not after me. After the entire team. Exactly the way it should be. That evening, I drove home and placed the framed drawing back on my desk. Next to it sat the city's medal of service. Neither one reminded me of success. They reminded me of something much more important. Character. I looked out my apartment window as the sun slowly disappeared behind the city skyline. Months earlier, I had believed I had arrived 3 hours too late. Now I understand the truth. I hadn't been late. I had arrived exactly where I was meant to be. The people who betrayed me lost a marriage, a friendship, their reputations, their money, and the trust of everyone around them because of their own choices. I gained something they could never steal. My integrity. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If you were in Naomi's place, after sacrificing one of the most important nights of your life to protect 50,000 people, how would you have felt if your own family repaid you with betrayal? Would you have walked away in silence, fought for the truth, or forgiven them after everything they had done? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you would have done. Your story might help someone going through a similar situation. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more emotional family dramas filled with betrayal, justice, powerful comebacks, and unforgettable endings. Until next time, thank you for watching. And remember, the truth may take time to be seen, but in the end, honesty always stands stronger than betrayal.